everyone to Daf Yomi Nazir 1 week at a time. This is our sixth class, and today we're going to be reviewing Daf 37 to 42. Um, okay, so let's begin. On Daf 37, we had the idea, and we saw this last week as well, that if you took, again, the Nazir is not allowed to eat bread that was soaked in wine. And from here, we get to an interesting concept, which is the combination of a permitted item with a forbidden item. And that is called heter, which is permitted, and isur. And here it seems that they combine in order to give you the amount, what we would call in Hebrew the shiur, that would make you liable. That's one option. That's the way we understood it last week. Another way to understand this is another concept, and that is in Hebrew it's called ta'am ke'ikar, which means the taste of forbidden food makes food forbidden, which means that if you eat the bread that's soaked in grapes or grape juice, so then it's not only that you have some grape juice with bread, it's that the bread now becomes grape flavored, and that is problematic, right? And here the Gemara says when you have this concept of ta'am ki'ikar, it's even when the actual food isn't there anymore. Um, and this is, we'll see an example of this in a minute, where if, let's say, you cooked something together and then you remove the item, the flavor is still there and it is therefore still prohibited. So here, the Gemara tells us on Daf 37 that for the Nazir, it would be forbidden, and for any prohibition, it would also be forbidden. The same thing with mixing two species, which is called kilaim, where you're not allowed to eat that new species, or orla. Orla is where you're not allowed to eat the produce of a fruit tree for the first 3 years of its life. So all of these things, even if you didn't eat the actual food, but the flavor or the taste from that food, it would still be prohibited. So the Gemara continues. Rabbi Akiva says, and remember, and this is how we started, that bread soaked in wine would be problematic. So it seems that there's an olive volume, a kazait of the bread plus the wine, and therefore you are liable. And this teaches us, again, the fact that, as we said in the beginning, the prohibited and the permitted combine together. In Hebrew, this is called tziruf. Litzaref means to combine. So they combine together to teach us that this new food is prohibited. Another way, another example of this is meat and milk, right? This is really a novelty because each one of those things is okay by itself, right? Dairy is okay to eat, meat is okay to eat, but if you cook the meat and the milk together, then it becomes problematic. Or it's this concept is learned from another source. The other source is when it talks about in the desert, the Jewish people got non-Jewish vessels. And the question was how they were going to purge these vessels from the non-kosher food or flavor. And the Torah tells us that you have to put them in the fire to get rid of the non-kosher food. But here it's not really the food. There's no food in the pot anymore. It's the taste. And the taste is what we say in Jewish law. In Hebrew, we say it's balua. It's absorbed into the walls of the vessel, and therefore you need to burn it out. And this shows, again, the concept, as I mentioned, ta'am ki'ikar. The flavor of the non-kosher meat is there, or non-kosher food is there. Therefore, we have to get rid of it. And therefore, they needed to kosher make these pots kosher. Even though it's interesting, just as an aside, in terms of dietary laws, in terms of kashrut, if you have something, a flavor from something non-kosher, and it's already after 24 hours, this is called tam pagum. It's already spoiled, meaning food doesn't taste good after 24 hours in the walls of a pot. And normally that would be okay, in the sense that if you accidentally cooked in this pot that you haven't used in 24 hours, really it's okay. But again, with these non-kosher vessels, you need to kosher them. You need to make them kosher through fire. Okay. The next thing we have is we were talking about the idea that not that prohibited and permitted food together is problematic. So we said that we learn it from Nazir and we learn it from Chatat. We'll see this in a minute, from the sin offering. And these are two verses that teach us the same law. And we learned this a long time ago. But if we only have two verses and not more and not less, we cannot extrapolate this law to another case. Right? If you have more than two, you could expand it. So let's just see, where is it with the sin offering, with the chatat? If you have shlamim meat, again, this is sacrificial meat that absorbed some fat from a sin offering. So, right, they were next to each other and it absorbed the flavor. So then you need to treat all the meat like the more stringent one, which is the sin offering, the chatat. And from here we see, again, this is the idea of tziruf, right? They combine together to create this new entity. So this is Rabbi Akiva's point, that you only learn it from these two things and not anything else. The sages, Rabbanan, say we don't learn it from a Nazir. We only learn it from Chatat. And if that's the case, now we can expand it to other things as well. Okay. We said all forbidden produce for the Nazir can combine together and make it a shiur, a unit of measure that will make the Nazir liable, even if it's eaten one right after the other, meaning even if it's not eaten at the same time. Okay. Daf 38, since we were talking about shiurim, again, shiurim are units of measure that make a person liable for whatever transgression, whatever chet we are talking about. So Daf 28, since we mentioned Rivi'it, Rivi'it is the volume, the liquid volume, generally of something either forbidden or permitted. So Rivi'it, which is a quarter log. So this Rivi'it never combines with, again, Isur and Heter, something permitted and something forbidden. It only combines in Nazir, meaning this is a very unique situation. And from here, the Gemara tells us that there are 10 places where we see this measurement of a Rivi'it. 5 are about red liquids, and 5 are about white liquids. What are we talking about? the 5 red, as you can imagine, think about what would be a red liquid that we would be talking about. So we have here wine for the Nazir is a revi'it. We have the unit of measure, the shi'ur for the 4 cups of wine, right? Pesach is coming up soon. First Purim, then Pesach. So for the 4 cups of wine, you need to drink at least a revi'it. If you drink at least a revi'it of wine, you are not allowed to rule in halacha, in Jewish law, right? We see you as, I guess, not really intoxicated, because I would imagine it would take more than that, but, not exactly in the straightest of minds. The next is you can't go into the temple, into the Beit HaMikdash, if you drank a revi'it. And a revi'it of blood, right? These were all wine. So that was 4 wine, and the last one is about blood. This amount of blood that comes out of either 1 or 2 corpses will make you impure to a dead body, meaning to matmet. So those are the 5 red ones. What are the 5 white ones? So we're going to see white is, even though oil is not really white, but I guess in comparison to red it is. So we're going to have wine, we're going to have oil and water, right? So red was wine and blood. 5 times we see the revi'it in white is a revi'it of oil in a dough, makes it needing challah, right? To take off challah, that's sanctified. You need a revi'it of oil in the sacrifice for the Nazir. You need a revi'it of water for the sacrifice of the mitzorah, of the leper, the person with tzaraat. And then if a person drinks a revi'it of impure liquid, he will become tameh. And this, of course, could be oil or water. And the last one is a revi'it of liquid that can't be carried on Shabbat. If you remember, a long time ago in Masechet Shabbat, we talked about carrying liquids out of your house. If you carry out a revi'it, you are liable. The Gemara asks, wait, there aren't any more revi'it cases? The Gemara says, no, there are other ones, but the other ones are a machloket, meaning not everybody agrees about them. So one is that you can wash your hands. 2 people can wash their hands together with a revi'it of water. Not everybody agrees with that. You might need a revi'it for each person. And you need a revi'it of water to put into right, the dirt that's put into the water to give to the sotah, the suspected adulteress. That also is a machloket if you need a revi'it of water. And the last one is some say that if you want to purify a very small utensil, let's say a needle, you might be able to put it into a revi'it of water, again, living water, mayim chayim, so rainwater or the ocean water, but not everybody, we say that that's not the case. You actually need a full mikvah, even if it's a very small item, so that would not be the case. Okay, the Gemara continues on 38 that all of these prohibitions seem to be one type, but they're called 2 different things, right? So you have grapes and raisins. Why are they called 2 different things? Because you get punished for each one individually. So too, let's say grape juice and grapes. They each have a punishment that is separate. Let's say you have grape seeds and grape skins. You get actually 3 sets of lashes. one for each of them, for the seeds and the skins, and the third one from don't eat anything that comes from grapes. Now, the Gemara questions this because if we have a general prohibition and then we have details or more specific things, then it seems that you don't get an extra set of lashes for the big thing as well. In Aramaic, this is called lav shebechlalot. A lav is a lotase, a prohibition. Shebechlalot means a general statement, right? The question is, if there's a general statement, do you get punished for that in addition to the specific things that you ate? And the Gemara gives examples of how you can eat certain things and get 5 sets or 6 sets of lashes. On Daf 39, we actually have a machloket if right, what the word is, if zag means seeds, and then chartzan means the skin or the opposite. Nowadays in modern Hebrew, chartzan are the seeds. So it's interesting. I guess that comes from here. Okay, let's do the next Mishnah on Daf 39. The truth is that we saw a lot of this, but then there's some things that are going to be new. So the Mishnah tells us a regular Nazirut process is 30 days, and if you shave your head or it is shaved for you, so then before you finish, you lose all the days from beforehand, meaning you lose the 30 days, and you have to wait another 30 days in order to complete the process. The Mishnah tells us it's prohibited to shave with a razor or scissors, or even to pull out your hair, even one hair, when you are a Nazir. Now, we'll talk about afterwards, you actually have to use a razor, but if in the middle you used a razor or even scissors, that is problematic. So, the Gemara explains. So here, it's just a fascinating Gemara here on Daf 39. The Gemara says, since we're talking about hair, does hair grow from the roots, and every day a little bit more of the hair, kind of comes out of the scalp? Or does the tip of the hair elongate, right? How does your hair grow? Which I think is just a fascinating question. Why are they asking this? So the Gemara says, right, if the person was shaved by bandits, right, somebody came and shaved their head, so then your holy hair, right, the Nazirut hair, isn't there anymore because you cut it off, and then all the new part that grows is new hair, and therefore you have to wait 30 more days. But if it grows from the tip, so then what was there, whatever was left is still there. So the holy hair is still there as it grows out. So now the Gemara seems to, I think there's a very clear way to know how the hair grows, but it's only going to be like the 4th answer of the Gemara. So you can all think about in your minds if you can think about the easy way to know how your hair grows. But first, the Gemara is going to go to lice. And the Gemara says, well, if you look at someone with lice, the lice is always at the scalp. So that means that it must grow from the tip, right? Because it's just growing here at the bottom. That's why the lice are always at the scalp. The Gemara says, no, the lice just walk closer to the scalp because as the hair grows, they want to be closer to the scalp, so they stay there. The opposite is, right, the dead lice or the nits in your hair. They grow out with your hair. This proves that the hair is growing from the roots. The Gemara then tries again with, let's say, if you have a braid and you sleep in that braid and then it becomes loose as it grows, so maybe it grows from the roots. And then, of course, the Gemara says we see very clearly that it grows from the roots for anybody who has ever dyed their hair. Right? It is clear that the dyed color, kind of inches its way down. That proves that your hair grows from the roots. Interestingly, in the Gemara, it seems to be talking about the men dyeing their hair. So that is just very interesting. Okay, the Gemara continues and says that if the hair can be bent and touch the base of the same hair, so then the person doesn't lose all 30 days. The idea is that there's still, I don't know if the word is substantial amount, but there's still some hair left. So you don't lose all 30 days. Let's say the person was shaved after the 30 days, meaning the person completed all of their Nazirut and then he was shaved. So then you only have to wait 7 days. This is learned from the impure Nazir, who waits 7 days and then can shave again. So that seems to be the answer to that. Okay, from here the Gemara tells us that the verse says you need to use a ta'ar. The word ta'ar in Hebrew means razor, and therefore you cannot cut your hair with a razor, but you also can't cut it with anything else, right? Anything is prohibited, or the Gemara says, no, maybe only a razor is prohibited, but anything else is not, right? It's not good, but it's not necessarily prohibited. So let's say, right, so we said that the last haircut at the end of the 30 days must be done with a razor. Again, that's learned from the word ta'ar, from razor in the verse. And the Gemara says, no, it's not learned from that. It's learned from the mitzorah. The mitzorah is the leper, the person with tzara'at, and the leper at the end of his when he gets better, he then has to shave his entire body, eyebrows included, and this is done with a razor. The Gemara on Daf 40 says to us, wait a minute, you can't learn Nazir from the Mitzorah because the Mitzorah is very stringent, and we can't learn from something more stringent to something lenient because we can't say necessarily that they are compatible, right? As I mentioned before, the Mitzorah shaves their entire body, whereas the Nazir only shaves their head. Therefore, we can't learn one from the other. Spoiler that on the next daf, we are going to learn one from the other. But at this exact moment, we cannot do that. Okay. Reminder, everybody should drink. Tomorrow's a fast day. Okay. So the Gemara continues. We have a verse that teaches that you need to shave with a razor. And here the Gemara continues and says that even if you remove one hair, you are also still liable for removing the hair. If you remove one hair, you're liable, and if you leave over 2 hairs, right? Let's say the person shaved their entire head, but they left over 2 hairs. That is not seen as completing the Nazirut process and cannot bring the sacrifices or cannot finish the process till the person cuts those last 2 hairs. And if you shaved most of your head, so then you lose the 30 days as we mentioned in the beginning. Now, again, as we said, anything that pulls out hair is forbidden. Or, right, even if he pulls out two hairs, maybe the person also loses those 30 days. From here, the Gemara discusses three people that shaved their heads: the Mitzorah, like we mentioned, the leper, the Nazir, and the Levi'im, the Levites. This was a one-time occurrence in the desert when, we'll see in Sefer Vayikra, when they inaugurated the Mishkan, the tabernacle. So the Levi'im were also inaugurated. Part of the inauguration process was they did a training for 7 days, then they needed to shave, and then they were actually lifted up by Aharon. So we see that these three people need to shave their heads. As we mentioned, they need to shave it with a razor. Again, we're going to try to learn one from the other, right? Nazir must be a razor, so too the Levi'im. But from where do we learn the Mitzorah, the leper? It can't be learned from the Levi'im because that was a one-time occurrence, and it cannot be learned from Nazir because both of these cases are unique. Rather, we're going to learn from both of them. This in Gemara language is called Hatzad Hashaveh, the side that is equal. What does that mean? We have three things, right? And let's say one is similar to one of them, and it's similar to another one of them, but these things are not necessarily similar, and therefore we're going to say they're all a little bit similar to each other, right? We're going to find, I guess we would call it like the common denominator, the tzad hashaveh between all of these things. So the Gemara says, what's the tzad hashaveh of these things? Both need to, right, the Levi'im and the Nazir, both need to be shaved and with a razor. Therefore, so too the Mitzorah needs to be shaved and with a razor. So that was good Gemara learning. Okay, so now the Gemara says, wait a minute, how could we learn Mitzorah from Nazir? If you remember, 5 minutes ago, I told you we can't learn Nazir from Mitzorah because one is stringent and one is more lenient. So how are we learning one from the other now? Right? When we said at the beginning of the daf that we can't learn it. So the Gemara says you're right. It's actually two separate opinions. The person who said that we can't learn it is different than the person over here who said that we can learn it. Okay, let's continue at the bottom of daf 40. We learned that we need to shave, again, the head from the fact that they also needed to shave their beard. Now, if you know Jewish law, it says, right, lo takifu pe'at roshechem, or pe'at zikanchem. Here we're talking about corners of your either your head or your beard. This is what we call pe'ot, right? The what are they called? Locks, floral locks. I don't know what they're called in English, right? The pe'ot. So we are not, men are not allowed to shave this area. So you might think that the Mitzorah also can't shave his beard. Maybe he can only shave his head and not his beard. So the Gemara says no. The verse says that they must shave both, meaning his head and his beard, with a razor, right? This is something, if you know Jewish law again, Jewish men are not allowed to shave their beards with a razor. That comes from this verse. But you are allowed with scissors, right? The idea is that scissors are not as close shaving. and therefore you're not really removing the hair, you're just trimming it. So that would be okay. Here in the case of the Metzora, he does shave his beard with a razor. Um, the Gemara says, right, maybe the Metzora can use scissors. And the Gemara says, no, the verse actually teaches specifically that you need to use a razor. We're now on Daf 41, and it says that when we have a positive mitzvah and a negative mitzvah, this is called an aseh and a lo taseh, right? If you can do both, so then great. However, if they contradict each other, right? Where do we see that? With the Metzora, right? The leper, it says at the end of his process, he needs to shave his beard, but it also says you're not allowed to shave your beard. So now we have two conflicting laws, an aseh, a positive one, and a lo taseh. So what do? So again, another, wow, this class is a lot of like fundamental rules. Another fundamental rule is in Hebrew it's called aseh doche lo taseh. If I have these two competing laws, the positive commandment trumps the negative commandment, right? So if the Metzora, the leper, must shave his beard, but a man is not allowed to shave his beard, we say the positive commandment of shaving trumps the negative commandment of not shaving, right? And therefore, he needs to shave. And he doesn't need to do it with scissors. He must do it with a razor. We also learn that if a Nazir becomes a leper, a Metzora, so then he needs to shave his head with the razor, right? Even though, again, competing values, even though he's a Nazir and he's not allowed to shave his head, but because he's a Metzora and he needs to shave it at the end, he needs to shave it. Of course, then he restarts his count and still is a Nazir. Okay, the sages use the word rosho, his head, to teach that the leper, the Metzora, can shave even, again, the corners of his head, those are the peot, and his beard, right? And therefore it says also zikano, right? That is what we just learned. Rabbi Eliezer learns this concept of aseh doche lo taseh, of the positive trumping the negative, from the mitzvah of tzitzit, right? The four-cornered garment. The verse says in the Torah that you're not allowed to wear shatnez. Shatnez is sorry, one second. Excuse me. Shatnez is a combination of wool and linen, and it says you lo tilbash shatnez, you're not allowed to wear shatnez, and the next verse is you need to make tzitzit. What do we learn from here? That tzitzit, which in general is a linen garment with wool fringes, right? So those fringes are shatnez. The Gemara says we learn from here that the aseh, the positive mitzvah of making tzitzit, trumps the lo taseh of shatnez. Okay, now daf 42, which is tomorrow's daf, says if the Nazir or the Metzora or the Levi'im, right? These are the three people that need to shave their heads. If they shave without a razor, or they leave two hairs on their heads, so then it's as if they didn't shave all. It's as if they didn't do anything. But in general, you should know that if you do the majority of something, we generally say that that's okay. Again, the Hebrew term for that is rubo kikulo, right? The rov, the majority, is like the kol, like everything. But in this case, that is not enough. He has to literally shave every hair on his head. So too, if a Nazir is impure, so then the same rules apply. If the Nazir left two hairs, as we mentioned, now the hair grows back, right? Everything else grows back. And then he shaved only those two hairs. Does that work? Says the Gemara. Right? A very, I think, creative case. Or another case, let's say you left two hairs and then you didn't wait a long time. Let's say the next day you cut one of them and the other one fell out, right? Or vice versa. One fell out and then you cut it, right? What's with this? So the Gemara says that the first shaving doesn't count because you left those two hairs there. And then cutting one hair is also not called shaving because you need at least two hairs you need to cut at least two hairs in order for it to be considered shaving. So in both of these cases, it wouldn't work. You'd have to wait for the hair to grow back and then shave the entire head. Okay, now we're going to have a few Mishnayot. This Mishnah says a Nazir can wash their hair, right, with shampoo, and you can like separate the hair with your fingers, even though sometimes we know that hair comes out, but that's unintentional. But you're not allowed to brush your hair or comb it. That for sure, hair will come out, so you're not allowed to do it. The Gemara explains this is because if you didn't intend to remove the hair, you are not liable. We saw this a lot in Masechet Shabbat. If you did not have the intent to do the action, then you are not liable. The next Mishnah says you cannot shampoo with dirt. Again, this seems crazy to us, but I'm assuming it's like an exfoliant, right, where you put something a little coarse and you rub it in to kind of remove some dirt. So you're not allowed to do that because that will for sure remove the hair. The Gemara explains maybe it's the type of dirt that you use. It causes the hair to fall out, or maybe because it's coarse. Either way, you can't do it. Okay, next Mishnah. So just first, before we read the Mishnah, in order to get punished with lashes, meaning if you transgressed and you did something wrong, in order to get punished for it, the person needs to be warned before they transgressed. The Hebrew term for this is hatra'ah. Hatra'ah means that you were warned. If you weren't warned, then you're not allowed to get punished because, maybe you would have said, oh, if I would have known the punishment, I never would have done that. So the case here is, yes, Zohar asks if this is a general rule. It is, and it's actually learnt from here, from Nazir. So the Gemara tells us, and here's the case. The Mishnah. If a Nazir drinks wine all day without anybody saying anything, or I guess someone said something in the beginning, but that's it. So then you're only punished once, even though you drank and drank and drank. But if they warn him every time he picks up the cup, they say, don't do it because you're going to get in trouble. So then the person is punished each time that he drinks. And the Mishnah goes through the same case with all three prohibitions, meaning, right, if you shave your head all day, I guess you shave different parts every hour. If nobody says anything, it's one punishment. If someone interrupts you and warns you each time, you get multiple punishments. So too with becoming impure, the same idea. Okay, so the Gemara is now going to talk about becoming impure. And the Gemara first tells us that, this is like an introduction, that in order to become tameh met, to be impure, so you can become impure by touching a corpse or by carrying it. And here it doesn't mean like literally carrying it, because obviously when you carry something, you're touching it. But let's say you put it in a knapsack and then you put the knapsack on your body, that's called carrying it, even though you're not directly touching it. Or the third way you can become impure is what's called tumat ohel. We've learned this many times, that if you enter a room where there is a dead body, so anything in that room becomes impure. So now, the Gemara teaches us that if a person becomes impure by touching or by carrying a corpse, and then they go into a room with with a dead body, so then you're liable for two violations. One for touching and carrying; those that's one. Those combine, and the other is ohel, right, which literally means a tent. That's a second violation. But if you touch a dead body and then you carry it, you're only liable for one. However, there's another opinion that says no, you are liable for two, even in that case. Um, so the Gemara proves that you can become impure after already being impure, which means you would be liable twice. Um, or right, there's one case that happens, but there's also a case where it doesn't happen. So the Gemara gives another case, right? Let's say um, it's right. So it seems that it's different, right? If a person is still touching a corpse, right, um, and then somebody touched them, that's one case. Or if he let go, that's another case. So if the person let go and then touches it again, so then that person raises their level of impurity, and then you're liable for two because you like stopped and started. But if you were still holding on to it, so then you're only liable one time. And this is the concept, what's called in Hebrew, tum'ah b'chiburin. Tum'ah, where you are attached. What does that mean? Right? Again, as we mentioned, if you're still holding it and you touch something else, or we'll see another case in a minute. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, isn't tuma b'chiburin only for touching sanctified meat, right, kodshim, or truma, right, again, which is given to the priest, and not for Nazir or for Korban Pesach? So here the Gemara explains the case, right? Let's say Ruvain touches Shimon, and Shimon is touching a dead body. So, right, they're all touching each other. So that's called tum'ah b'chiburin because they're all attached. So Ruvain becomes impure for 7 days, and he can't eat sacrificial meat, but he can eat korban pesach, and he isn't impure for if he was a nazir. So we see that there isn't this right connectedness for nazir. So the Gemara says you're right. There's biblical and there's rabbinic. Rabbinic meaning derabanan, if a person touches a person who touches a met, a dead body, so then um, they are impure. But if a person just touches the dead body, that is deoraita from the Torah. And here, the last thing says that if a pure person enters a house, right? That's ohel, and then touches a dead the corpse, and then there are two um, um, transgressions here. But let's say if you're in a field, you've only transgressed once. So that's how we can construct a case with one or two. Okay, Zohar's asking a wonderful question, right? We did learn that there are different levels of tum'ah, of impurity. But here, what we're asking is, even within the same level of tum'ah, um, are we, right? Let's say, right, can you become impure and then become impure again, right? Definitely if you were a lower level and you moved up, for sure. But let's say you touched a dead body and then you touched another dead body, right? Those are both tumat av, right? You're touching the dead body. Um, do we say that you get punished twice or not? That's what we're discussing here, especially when we're dealing with a Nazir who is going to, again, for most people, this really isn't relevant because you're not punished for becoming impure. There are consequences, but there's no punishment, meaning that's the way of life. But there are certain people who are not allowed to become impure, and that's what we're talking about here, right? If you would become impure numerous times, do you get more punished, right? Another punishment. That's what this Gemara was talking about. So thank you very much. Those were short dapim, and I didn't do 7. I did 6. So next week we will finish. Right, we'll do all of those dapim. So I want to wish everyone a Purim Sameach. First, have a meaningful fast tomorrow on Ta'anit Esther, and have a wonderful Purim on Tuesday. And for any of you that live in Yerushalayim, you should have a wonderful Purim on Wednesday. As we learned in Masechet Megillah, right, my mother-in-law here is going to celebrate on Wednesday. As we learned in Masechet Megillah, you are going to be celebrating on a different day. So really wishing everyone a wonderful, wonderful Chag, and see you next week.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye bye.